Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Right People, Right Places podcast. I'm your host, Raul Mendoza, and I have the absolute pleasure of having John Collins on the show today. We've got some amazing things to talk about here. I'm so excited to get into this conversation. John is a seasoned business leader. He has about 25 years of experience helping companies grow and adapt across a variety of industries like telecom, manufacturing, distribution, and SaaS. He's launched products, he's scaled products, and he's built teams that have survived a lot of change. And that's what we're going to talk about today, just the importance of adaptability and leadership. If there's ever a time where change doesn't happen, there's probably something wrong, and change is inevitable. The only constant is change. So we're going to talk about how we can constantly adapt and how that is such a key leadership trait and ability, especially in our day and age where things can change in a day and technology can take us to places that we couldn't have imagined 20 years ago. So the great John Collins actually also um, is a Vistage Chair, and his career and background experiences has led him to this wonderful network of CEOs and other pioneering leaders where he provides his coaching, his expertise, and is able to draw from his years of experience in the areas that he's worked in and really help CEOs and leaders get unstuck and kind of crack the code for them internally and crack the code for their business. So, um, John, it's a pleasure to have you. Thank you. I'm thrilled to have you.
Thanks for inviting me, Raul. It's a real pleasure to talk to you. I just wanted to make one correction. As a Vistage Chair, I actually bring other CEOs like you, because I know you're a member, like
Yes.
you together to help each other sort of crack the code and get unstuck and get out of the weeds. So as a team, the group is a team of expert, assistance to help you sort of understand sort of what's blocking you, what the challenges that are facing you are, and how to move forward. So it's a big team effort. It's not just one coach. It's 18 coaches helping members succeed.
I absolutely love that you brought in that color and insight. It's so true. I'm a Vistage member. I'm part of a CEO group here in Milwaukee, and this is why I love talking to Vistage chairs because they're able to do this kind of be able to kind of take a step back and really understand what's happening and kind of get a sense of the bigger picture. And as a CEO myself, I can become myopic into the issues of what's going on in my business. And the beauty of being a part of Vistage is just as John so beautifully stated here, it is a team of people that come together that are we're all coaching each other through the challenges of business and growth. So absolutely love that you said that, John. And again, this is why I'm excited to have you on.
Well, I'm glad to be here.
Fantastic. Well, let's kick things off. Let's dive in. Let's talk about your background. I kind of teed it up a little bit here and kind of dove into the macro of your experience and background. But love to hear your story and love for our audience to hear your story of your leadership journey and what's brought you to where you're at today as a Vistage Chair and with through that all just being able to talk about this issue of adaptability and how important it is in leadership.
Sure. Well, when I went to school at the University of Chicago and studied history, and had an amazing education. I really learned and honed my critical thinking skills there. But leaving college in 1984 with a history degree doesn't really offer lots of career opportunities necessarily in the corporate space. I actually moved to a small educational publisher to help them work on a history textbook, but they were looking for a sponsor. They needed a big publishing company to buy in. And so the owners bought an IBM PC, two floppy disk PC. And so my first adaptation was I had to learn to do something that made me valuable. So I computerized their books on this PC, and
Mm.
I discovered that I really enjoyed it. And from there, I moved on to a Wang computer software company, and that was where my
Wow.
tech career started. Eventually, I moved to Silicon Valley, and at the beginning of the internet boom, when uh, when routers were just being invented, when I worked for a company called Wellfleet Communications, when Cisco was our biggest competitor, and the two of us were scrappy startups. Wellfleet was actually for 4 years, I think 4 years, the fastest growing public company in America. So it was an exciting ride, lots of learning, and I learned how much I loved the startup culture, the small business and the commitment to just to get it going and get things done. And from there, I sort of developed and I went to another startup, and eventually I found myself in Europe for about 15 years,
Hmm.
managing the Europe, Middle East, Africa, and Asia for Lucent Technologies for one
Mm.
of the business houses they bought. Lucent spun off from AT&T. They acquired the company I was working for as their first acquisition and went through many, many acquisitions while I was there. And it was a great opportunity for me to learn because, a lot of American companies, they have overseas offices and they understaff them. And so the staff there really
Mm.
learn how to run the whole business. Unlike the siloed culture you get in the U.S. branch
Right.
of those organizations. So it was really great. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about the difference in culture. When people say language is culture, I learned that,
Ooh, I like
firsthand.
that.
Learning to understand people's expectations, very different expectations in different countries, different cultures than in the U.S. And all of that really had me sort of, kept me dancing. I was adapting every day, trying to sell networking equipment, telecoms equipment to people, and the needs and expectations, and more than anything, the assumptions that people made were completely different, in every culture that I went to, and so it made me a good listener, I think, and it also made me less quick to react, and it taught me to really sort of contemplate what I was learning. So, and
that's
then,
that's wonderful.
yeah, so about 15 years ago, I moved back to New York City, where I live now,
Hmm.
and now I'm starting up this gig with Vistage, and I'm very excited. I'm recruiting my first group of CEOs and selecting the candidates very carefully because, as you know, in your group, the
Hmm.
dynamic of the group is the secret sauce. What makes everything
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, it's so true. It's so true. Yeah, that's a great overview of your background and experience and what you've done and the journey. There's so much there that I could pull out. I mean, how language is culture. I think that's like another podcast episode right there.
it
If you think
is.
about it, it's like, oh, gosh. I mean, that's anyway. You said that, and my mind started going. Was
Right.
starting to chase the shiny object, and now I have to rein it in. So yes, but I mean, all throughout that, you were a part of some technology revolutions in our culture. Before data migration was a thing, you did it
Right.
in the very in its very purest form before it's become what it is today, and now it's in the cloud. And it's incredible where we've come from and where we've gone. And with that, I mean, how has adaptability shaped your career and your leadership style throughout all those changes in technology from role to role, company to company?
Right. Well, I mean, one of the exciting things about being in tech in those days was that was a segment that was adapting all the time. I mean, for
Hmm.
example, we were launching a completely new product. We were
Hmm.
routers, which were building the internet. So the internet, it didn't exist before routers were built, and then
Wow.
routers, created this entire new world of possibilities, and we were adapting all the time. When I was first installing routers, I was a systems engineer, so I was part of a sales team. So
Okay.
trusted, I was the trusted guy of a two-person team, and they were like 14 different routing protocols, very
Mhm.
complicated before the world sort of settled on IP and the transformation to the worldwide net really started. So adapting all the
Gotcha.
time to the technology challenges was part of of that experience. And then as through my career, I've been part of often small startup technology companies, and that is a constant process of adaptation, because as a systems engineer, you're bringing back to the product house the changes that the market needs. So like with every startup, you build a product, and then you go out to the customers, and the customers say, well, it's nice, but we needed to do these things. And so it's a constant give and take with the development team and the customers and their expectations. And so you're constantly adapting it in that process. And I loved that. It
Wow.
kept me very energized. Late nights, at installations, working with customers, big, European banks who, were looking for an advantage. All of that stuff really kept me excited and on top of things.
That's wonderful. I love that. I think it's interesting. It's, even though we've accelerated in so many ways technologically, you know, the customer is the driving force for product innovation at the end of the day. And the only thing is nowadays it's happening faster than we can keep up with, and it's become more about the thinking and strategy, and technology is almost allowing us to focus on those pieces more. And it's just interesting how things evolve over time and how that changes culture and changes our world. And it's you went through some pretty significant cultural changes in our world and how technology played a part of that. So that's
Right.
really neat.
Yeah,
Um,
so I feel very fortunate to have had that experience.
it's so applicable to now. I mean, even I'm hearing you say this, I'm like, geez, like it's to have the perspective of how do you approach change now? The great thing is these I think wisdom is timeless, and that's one of the reasons why I love Vistage, and I love I'm a fairly new CEO myself, and I think there's such richness in being able to tap into the knowledge and wisdom of others that have gone through a series of experiences that have brought them to the place that they're at, whether you're the chair or other CEOs within that group. I think it's so great. So even at I'm already I feel like I'm being coached here a little bit here as you're sharing. It's great. um, well, let's keep going with this. I'd be curious to hear. You kind of shared a little bit there, but I want to kind of take it a little bit deeper. What's I don't know if there's an experience specifically throughout your experiences in your background, what you've done, that comes to mind that most taught you what it means to stay flexible under pressure as a leader.
Well, there is nothing that teaches you to be flexible and calm and collected under pressure than being in an equipment room at midnight in a bank, and the piece of equipment you're installing isn't working, and the network is crashing, and the customer's screaming, and that teaches you, to stay calm. I've been in that situation quite a lot. So, and in the end, you almost crave it, that
Huh.
excitement, but I've seen lots of situations, when we were acquired by Lucent. Lucent was, a brand new company, the
Hmm.
equipment division of AT&T, the
Hmm.
telecoms, the telecoms builders. And in those days, I still thought I had an amazing CEO at Wellfleet, really smart. All the leadership team, all real smart. I had nothing but respect for them. And then I went to Lucent, which was, an enormous organization with lots of complexity and, slow moving, impossible to sort of find your way through it. I mean, I was a little piece of it, and we were unbothered by most of that. But I noticed, that as they acquired more and more organizations,
Hmm.
in the end, they stopped looking at their core business and stopped sort of managing the change that they needed to be implementing in their product set so
Mm.
that they fell behind the competition. So people like Cisco and other people
Mhm.
overtook them. And eventually, Lucent became a shadow of itself. It was the number one invested stock for 401ks in America, right? It
Mm.
was the most popular investment for retirees, and
Mm.
uh, and they lost the plot. They didn't mind the p's and q's. They did not
Yeah.
look at their core business, and that fell apart, and that left the rest of the acquisitions, struggling because the cash disappeared to run their businesses, and eventually it was acquired and doesn't exist anymore, really, and that is that was a big lesson for me, first of all, to see, you know, my net worth decline because I had, options, but also to see what was a really respected organization fail because they didn't adapt and they didn't do their homework, and they weren't course correcting. It was, they were entertaining people, they were
Mm.
entertaining telecom executives on the golf course, but
Yep.
Cisco was building better products, right?
Mm.
And so they lost the battle because they didn't adapt. They didn't understand who the new customer was, what the new uses of the technology were going to be, and they got frozen out of that process. And once
Wow.
I learned that lesson, right, it was a hard one to watch, but it taught me, always examine your assumptions, as I said before, and
Mm.
keep a close eye on your competitors, and if your customers are talking to your competitors, find out what your customers like more about those guys, because you'll
Wow.
find your problems. But I don't. That was broken inside Lucent, and I thought to myself, I never want to be in a company that breaks that link. You know,
Yeah.
uh, again. So
Wow. Very interesting. A lot there. I mean, there's so many different ways I wanna go with this. Um, I think companies can get to a place, leadership teams could get to a place where they're comfortable, and that's part of putting in the work, making things happen, getting the product out the door, and you've built something, like Lucent, they
right,
built something. It was successful. It was great, and it was almost like they got comfortable, and that and in getting comfortable, they lost touch of what made them great, and uh, gosh, how do you prevent that from happening? I've got a couple different thoughts in my mind, but I'd love to hear from you. How do you prevent yourself? How do you prevent yourself? How do you prevent a leadership team? How do you prevent an organization from getting to a place where they don't even realize that it's kind of like the whole analogy of the frog boiling, and there's like a slow boil going on to the point where they realize they're being, and then they pass away. I forget how that goes, but you know what I mean. There's something of that that's happening, that can happen within organizations, that can stagnate and lose that sense of vision and mission that got them to where they're at to begin with.
sure. I think it really depends on looking out for, like, the clues to disruption, right? In Lucent's
Mm,
case, the disruption wasn't really a particular product. The disruption was that the way of the world had changed, and hundreds and
right.
thousands of tech companies were sprouting up that had never been competitors for their business, and so they couldn't see, that disruption coming because there were so many competitors, and I think
Right.
the most important thing is make sure you know who your customer is and who's making
Yes.
the buying decision, because
Yep.
while they were entertaining the CEO of a telecom company on the golf course, the director, the CIO, the tech people were actually making the decisions about the technology for the next generation of networks for the telcos. and
Mhm.
that's because the competitors were in at that level, working with their engineers and their buying teams, while the CEOs were more disconnected from it. Right? CEOs can be, especially in a company that large,
Yes.
can be
Yes.
very disconnected from some of the day-to-day sort of purchasing activity, and I think that's an important thing, is to keep know who the customer is. Right? It's a sort of
Mhm.
basic of sales. Know who's making the recommendation, knows who is making the decision. Right? The person who signs the check might not be the actual influencer on the final decision.
Mhm.
And if you're not sort of looking for who might disrupt your business model, and who they're selling to in that market, then you could find yourself, holding the bag. You don't,
Yeah.
you've lost your competitive edge. And that happened. The company Wellfleet that I worked for, you know, they got acquired with, they merged with another company, a merger of equals, and it didn't work because they were too now spread out, and they were focused, and stopped focusing on being the best router manufacturer, and that was the death knell for them. And
Right.
so I think that's it.
Mm.
I see it in most of the businesses that I've been in. Is you have to look for the disruptors,
Mhm.
and now because
Hmm.
younger people can start businesses like you, start businesses
Yeah.
very quickly, right?
Yes.
And they get some funding, they start their business, and they're not even the competitors you're thinking about, right?
Yes.
And because they're invisible to the big companies, and until they win a couple deals, and then you say, wow, who are these guys? You know,
Right.
and you often, it's very easy to convince
Uh.
yourself, I don't need to worry about them. Well, but you have to always be looking, because someone builds a better mousetrap, you're in trouble.
Yep. I mean, that resonates with me big time. I mean, you're talking about mousetraps. I'm talking about talent. I'm trying to, in a good way, trap talent and attract them to organizations. That's what we do here at Rapido Talent. So, um, yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, in order, as someone that is the leader of my company and organization, I have to talk to other operators. I have to talk to other operators to understand what's going on in the market, what's being disrupted. I think being able to have that level of engagement and connection with other operators and other CEOs, even, another reason
Right,
why I love um, Vistage is because you have access to other operators that have businesses in different industries that may be adjacent to you, and you get to hear a different perspective. And I think it kind of like wakes you up to, wait a second, am I missing something here in my business? It's like, because you're talking to other leaders who have a commitment to staying ahead and working
right,
on their business. Well, first of all, working on themselves, and then working on their business, and then really mobilizing their people to make great things happen, because that's what a CEO does at the end of the day. I'm saying
right,
this from a place of understanding, uh, because other people have said it to me, but I don't know that I've even fully realized it. I'm saying it because other experienced CEOs have shared that with me. I haven't earned my stripes in that same way yet.
right. And it's really important that they always say, if you're the CEO and you're the smartest person in the room, you don't have the right team. Right?
Yep.
You can't do everything as a CEO. You can't keep your finger on the pulse of every issue that has to be taken care of, and so you have to use talent agencies to really find the best people to build,
Yes.
a team that you can count on, because you can't do it all. And I think that's really important for CEOs. It's very easy to be the hero, to try to be the hero, right?
Hmm.
As that Kennedy said, victory has 1,000 fathers, but failure is an orphan, right? So,
it's
you,
it's a
you
good
know,
quote.
you can, everyone wants to be the hero, but you need a bunch of heroes. You need a team of heroes, as your leadership team. And a lot of times, the problem isn't that the CEO isn't a great
Mm,
CEO in a company. It's that there are some people in leadership who aren't really doing what they need to do, and it's hard for the CEO to figure out sort of how to make a change to fix that problem. HR issues are one of the biggest things that
mhm,
CEOs deal with.
mhm.
Recruitment, finding the right talent, for sure. It's very, very complicated, and it's probably the number one thing that a CEO should be doing as the quarterback is to making sure that it's the top players that are coming into their organization, and sometimes that's just an HR thing, right?
Yeah,
And that's really a mistake. If the CEO isn't personally involved in the recruiting effort, that's when mistakes get made. And it takes 6 months, 8 months, a year for you to realize you made a bad hire, and then it takes you another 6 months to a year to get rid of the leader you think isn't really performing. So, um,
right.
it's important to get the good talent up front and to build that team.
Absolutely. Man, that is so true. I think that is, yeah. I mean, you said it beautifully there. I think the CEO has to multiply themselves. They have to, and they do that through their leaders. And I think one of the biggest things, I think you hit the nail on the head, that, you know, you talked about, prior organizations that you've worked with where they became so large and the CEO becomes the complexity of the business takes up their mind and thinking. So what can they do to safeguard against being able to stay adaptable and flexible? Well, building a leadership team that fundamentally understands how to do that and making the main thing, right? And you can't do that by yourself. You have to build a culture of adaptability, and how you do that is through leaders. And
Right.
that's what I'm hearing from what you're saying. It's like, I'm that's kind of the a takeaway I'm getting from what you're saying is if I'm not building, well, first of all, I have to be adaptable and understand what the main thing is. But if I'm not actually somehow passing that over to a leadership team that can own it for themselves and intrinsically understand what it means to be adaptable, then we're all lost,
Right.
So it does start with us and it trickles down, so is the
Exactly.
CEO, so is the organization. It's interesting
And,
how
and,
your personality, flows through.
the problem for small and medium-sized businesses is that they don't often have the budget to bring on the team leaders that they
Mhm.
need. And so it stunts their growth. It makes it hard for them to adapt because they don't have those people in place. And that's what really excites me about Vistage is that if you don't have those leaders on your team in your business, you go every month to your Vistage meeting and there are 18 people who are solving most of the same problems you are, and you learn you learn from them how you can solve some of these problems, and and that trusted circle, you know, really it helps you deal with your internal issues while you're growing. If you can't afford, uh, you know, uh, uh, a VP, a CFO, for example, or even a fractional CFO, you know, there's always going to be people in the group who are going to give you some advice on what they've done because they might be a little bigger or they might have tackled the problem a little differently. And you're not going to get that even at a networking group,
Yeah,
of 1,000 CEOs because they don't know you, they don't know your business, they haven't sat down and really talked to you, and that's the difference. The Vistage Group helps these small and medium-sized businesses, and even though we've talked about Lucent,
yeah.
most of my experience has been in small businesses. I always migrate
Mhm.
back to
Mhm.
smaller businesses
I
that
love
have
it.
all these resource challenges, that can't find leadership, and that are laser focused on solving a single problem, you know, but then growing to be a bigger organization and solving multiple problems for their customers. The scale up stage is hard to achieve.
Totally. I love that. I love that you took it to Vistage. I think, that's kind of where I want to go next in this conversation is, yeah, I wanted to tap into, as a Vistage chair, you lead CEO peer groups where leaders share challenges. what would you say is is the common adaptability issues that you see CEOs facing today? I know you're in the process of building this, but even in conversations that you've had with CEOs and throughout your experience, what would you say is kind of a common thread there?
You know, I would say the common thread is always an HR issue.
Mhm.
Finding the
Mhm.
right people, building the right team, structuring the
Yep.
team in the right way,
Yep.
adapting the way the team works to hit new opportunities, or adapting it to take advantage of new technologies, right? That could make things forward. So, what are businesses dealing with right now? Everyone is panicked about artificial intelligence, right? And
Yeah, right.
how do I use it? Where do I go? And so you see these, these CEOs saying we're going to be 80% AI, and then you read, that the feedback loop is, well, none of these projects are really succeeding. Why is that?
Right.
Because AI is a tool, and the team
Mhm.
has to be focused on a goal by using when they're using that tool, and the expertise is still not there in the market to teach the CEOs and teach these enterprises how to
Yeah.
leverage it and make it work. So it's
Yep.
you get a lot of AI startups. I don't know how many there are, but
It's so
from what
true.
I look at on LinkedIn, there must be 10 million of them, and
Right.
how do you use that, to make a difference, and what things are really AI and which things are repackaged like AI, but it's just a set of charts, or
Seriously.
because in some ways, some of the stuff that I look at, that technology's been around for a long time.
Yep.
Analysis software. Is it AI? I don't know, but it gets very confusing for everybody, and it's very hard. I mean, for sure, AI is going to change the world, right? But
Yep.
a lot of companies are going to make bad bets on AI, and that's going to be, painful for them to recover from.
Totally. Oh my gosh, I think you're hitting on such a great topic here. That is one of the things that I think CEOs need so much help today. I know I need it. Is look, we have all this great technology. I mean, there is technology coming out faster than ever before. It's like I feel like once I get used to a technology, there's already three or four other technologies that have come out. I mean, I just can't keep up. But you know what you're talking about here that I think is so important is we need discernment as leaders. We need the ability to discern a real ability versus AI, because people are learning how to use AI in a way that causes them to be an authority, but do they really have authority in what they're doing? And I think what brings authority and and builds business is actually it's gritty. It's solving problems. It's failing over and over again. You can't AI can help you with that process, but at the end of the day, you do have to go through the process.
Right. It's funny. There's all these tools that say, when you're doing sales, you should use AI to write your letters, and I just think, if you can't say it, you're not building an authentic relationship with a client
Yep.
if something else is writing your copy, right? There's like a basic level of capability and authenticity in your that goes into your writing, that is telling your customer or your prospect who you are. And,
Yes.
people are using AI to short circuit that, but that's really not, I mean, that's not, I think, the most effective use of AI in the market, you know,
Totally.
I mean,
Totally.
I think, I look at the medical opportunities for AI. That's, I think, incredible, where they can find drug interactions faster than a human can. Amazing,
Totally.
right? That seems like earth-shaking technology to me. Not
Totally.
you know, how can I sharpen this letter so it's a little punchier so I can sell some toothbrushes? I don't.
Yeah, there's so much there that's, you can have the right script, but if you don't understand the interaction, if you can't read the room, if you can't understand what's going on in your market, like really understand from conversations you had with other companies, other operators. Those are nuanced. That's nuanced information. And it's almost kind of like the experience is like the checkbook. It's like I remember having to track my budget in a checkbook, and you feel that because you're
Right.
writing it down, and
Right.
there's something beneficial about the learning of that you don't get any other way. You just have to do it to learn it.
Right. Agreed.
Anyway,
100%.
yeah.
100%.
I love that we went on this topic. I think it's so helpful. I think this is going to be an ongoing um, topic for CEOs, is learning how to discern like real ability from AI ability. The
Right.
ability to use technology to build authority versus actually to use experience and grit and to build authority and actually solve real problems. AI can be a part of that process, but man, if you're not really going through it, you're not really becoming what you need to become for yourself and for your company. So
Right.
let's get real here, right?
Yeah. If you
Well,
outsource that to a computer, you're never sure what the outcome's going to be.
right.
You have to do the heavy lifting yourself as the CEO and as a leader in the business.
I love it. I love it. Well, this has been such a great conversation. As we're coming to a close here, I wanted to give opportunity to ask a couple more questions here that I think would be beneficial to our audience here. And I think some of this we might have already covered. So, but just to kind of make sure that we didn't miss any insights,
Huh?
any nuggets of gold here. With all the rapid changes in technology, markets, and customer expectations, what would you say are the adaptability skills that leaders most need in the next 5 to 10 years?
I think that it comes back to what I said earlier.
Yeah.
You need to build a strong team and make sure they're looking
Yep.
at the disruptors that are going to change your business and how your competitors are going to try to
Yep.
get advantage away from you. I mean, no matter if it's 5 years, 10 years, 50 years, it always comes down to the basics, right? Those disruptors they are more and more present in the market, and
Mhm.
it's very hard to get rid of the noise and really focus.
Totally. And I think what would you say resilience has to in terms of like a characteristic of a leader or a CEO, how do you think resilience plays into that?
I think being able to bounce back when you see you've had a strategic direction failure, having some options,
Mhm.
listening to your employees. I think one of the things I've learned a lot is that the team beneath me has a lots and lots of important intelligence that they need to share, and often there is no mechanism for their knowledge to get up to the decision making level, and that keeps you resilient because you're hearing from them all the time, and if they're telling you you're doing something wrong, you need to then adapt and bounce back from what might be an oncoming failure. But it's also about, resilience is, not, you don't have to recover from enormous failure. You can just keep course correcting, like
Mm,
with a ship, you course correct 1 degree, in some amount of time, the distance between your targets is going to be of your goals is going to be incredible. So course
right.
corrections, are undervalued. They don't have the excitement, but they are the real power, I think, in terms of resilience.
Oh, that's so good. Sorry, that's gold. Uh, wow, wow. I had a couple more questions, but I just wonder if we should just leave it there because I think that is the quintessential skill set of a CEO, a leader of an organization, is this ability. Resilience is bouncing back, course correcting. If you can't do that, you can't adapt,
Right,
and you're not going to succeed, and you're not going to learn. You can't learn without course correcting. Like course correcting requires you to learn what is creating the drift.
right. Well,
So
I'm happy to sort of end it here, but I just wanted to say,
yeah.
I really enjoyed this a lot, and I hope that I have at least one member in my group who is as inquisitive and curious and challenging as you are.
Well, thank you so much, John. It has been an absolute pleasure to have you on. I'm excited to hear, kind of see you continue on this journey as you continue to build your groups, and I hope that we can continue our relationship. And I can see a part two in our history, in our future here,
Good.
as because there's just so many different things you brought up here that I'm just like, gosh, I want to ask him about this, even if it's just for me. I know, audience, you want to hear it too. We're gonna get it for you. let's just let's just give John some time here. So, but I guess just to say, and wrapping up here, where can folks find you if there's a CEO that is looking for a peer-to-peer group, kind of that, and is looking for a group to join and would like to learn more, where can folks find you?
That's a good question. I didn't prepare for to give you a link, but
That's okay.
my I'll give you my email, which is the best way forward. It's john.collins@vistagechair.com. And if you go there, I will always come back to you. You can find me on LinkedIn. My
Yep.
profile is JF Collins UK. And so either one of those ways, I'm wide open, in terms of communication. So whoever sends me a note, I will definitely get back to you.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing that. I mean, just to say, your LinkedIn profile is what drew me to you. So I think that's a great resource, and it's great that you have that website as well, for Vistage. So there you go, folks. John, again, I want to thank you for being on the Right People, Right Places podcast. I'm excited, for our audience to take this conversation in, and I look forward to having you on again. And yeah, I think that's a wrap. And
Okay. Thanks, Raul. And good luck with the new baby.
thank you. All righty. See you,
Okay.
everybody.
Yes. Bye bye.